What is going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Second Guessan with Stressan. I'm your host, Garret Williams, aka Texans commentator or Houston Stressans. Today, we're joined by Brandon Scott, a well-known local Houston radio media personality. So, Brandon, welcome. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. I'm glad to be on with you. Like before we even get into anything, I want to kind of just salute you for the work you've done over the past year, 6 months to a year or so, or however long it's been since you've been on the scene. It's real impressive to see how you have resonated with the Texans community and audience, and it's a fun time, man. I like to watch some of the videos and the social media commentary that comes from a lot of the stuff that you do. So this is an honor to be on with you.
Man, that means a lot. I mean, you're somebody who I have a lot of respect for, and as I've been doing what you kind of highlighted, like I've gotten to know certain media members and personalities better and better, such as yourself. So that definitely means a lot. And I'll obviously shoot it right back to you and say, I appreciate everything that you've done, and that's kind of, as people have come to find out, this is like my goal, and with doing these interviews is for us to better get to know you guys. So with that being said, I'll just kind of ask you if you could just kind of provide us like a background on yourself, include personal life or not. But I guess the main thing would be just to kind of highlight you and your sports world and your journey, your career, and how you've gotten to your point today.
Yeah, so I've been at Sports Radio 610 now for almost 6 years. And so and I guess that's probably the part that people know most of is me being at Sports Radio 610 and all of that. But before that, I'm really just more so like the way I look at it is just like a journalist by trade and a sports fan just by nature or by experience, right? And so getting to Sports Radio 610 about 6 years ago was essentially me bringing my two worlds together, like my professional world, my professional life, which was journalism. I got a background covering sports, covering news, covering local politics, covering courts, crime, government, pretty much anything that you can think of. So I'm trained in that area, but I always really wanted to be around sports, and I've covered plenty of sports too, even before I got to 610. But the journey, the long or the short of it, was figuring out a way to bring my journalism sensibilities and align that with my sports fandom, and how could I have fun at work every day. And so that's what brought me here, man. And some people have heard this story because I've told it on the radio before. But the way I get to 610 is, if you go back about 6 years ago, I was working at KHOU, Channel 11.
Mm-hmm.
So the CBS, for people who don't know, that's the CBS affiliate in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
And excuse me, and if you also know, Seth Payne does weekly. He would do the Sunday sports show there, and I think he still does it. But Seth Payne does the Sports Extra on Sunday nights at KHOU, and so he's been doing that for years, right? Well, I happened to have met Seth back when I was in college over a decade ago. Okay, and one way or another, and I went to Sam Houston State, so I
Nice.
met him
I went to
at
SFA.
there
Accent
you go.
Jacks.
So this is a perfect story then, because as you know, as a SFA guy, we were playing each other at what was then Reliant Stadium for like a decade plus, right? We were doing the Battle of the Piney Woods
What year were
between
you at
Sam.
Sam?
So I would have been there. I was there when they started that, right? When they started playing there at Reliant. So I would have been there from 2007, and I stuck around for a while.
Yeah, I
So
was 07 to 11 at SFA, so
yeah, so I was
actually played on the
2007.
football team there.
Okay. So yeah, I was '07 to about 2012, maybe even
Yeah.
hung around
Yeah, yeah.
a little bit longer than that. But
Nothing
but
wrong with
anyway,
that.
around '09, '10, '09 or 10 or somewhere around there is when they started doing the Piney Woods at Reliant,
Mhm.
and that was when I got a chance to meet Seth Payne. And 610 was doing the game, right? They were broadcasting the game, and Seth was doing the color commentary. And I guess at that point, whenever I met him, I made an impression of some sort, and we never lost contact, or like we weren't like best buds or anything, but we never lost contact, and he never forgot me. And so fast forward about a decade later or so, not quite a decade later, but let's call it eight years or so, 7 or 8 years later, I'm working at KHOU, and he's doing his weekly spot with Sports Extra at KHOU, and we connected there and talked about, hey, what would it take to get me over there at Sports Radio 610, and basically from there the rest was history.
Man, that's awesome. So I guess like, if anybody is kind of like aspiring to kind of, be in your shoes one day, like I think that's a good little memento there is basically, networking, and you never know who will come back into the picture later on. It sounds like, just like that example you laid out ended up working out in your favor years down the road. Is that right?
That's exactly right. And Seth has talked about this. I don't want to speak for him, but he's mentioned this before of it being like a thing of like I wasn't trying to impress him. Like I was
Yeah.
genuinely happy to meet him. I knew who he was, and
Hmm.
I was a fan. I'd listened to them on the radio at the time. He was doing like I think he was maybe doing a show with Mike Meltzer at the time, and so I was a fan of both of them, fan of their show, and I just went up and introduced myself, and then through the course of conversation, found myself to be helpful to him. Because this as whether you're on the SFA or the Sam Houston State side, we know more about those teams than anybody else is going to know,
Yep.
right? Like the outsiders are not going to know as much about SFA as the SFA people, and likewise with Sam Houston. So I knew more about the Sam Houston team and really honestly about SFA too than he did at the time, and was able to be helpful to him, like in real time, and not like on some let me impress you type of thing, but
Yeah.
on some just being regular and normal and trying to be helpful. And he never forgot that. So that was like me planting the seed without even knowing it or realizing it way back in college. This is like 2010, 2011, somewhere around there. For, like I said, 7 or 8 years later, maybe more, finding myself at 610.
That's awesome. And so like I can kind of attest to like this as like a thing I've observed as well, like doing what I've been doing. Like just the fact that you're on here now with me, like we don't really know each other, like we interact, but like you were, more than down, and I'm thankful for your time. But like I've had that same interaction 100 times over within this same community, specifically like Texans community, but like overall in general, like I've found it's kind of refreshing to see like how easily approachable people are, like you would think otherwise, media members or whatever it may be, but everyone seems super down to earth. Like I'm always blown away at like how like real and cool people are. So it kind of sounds like a similar deal for you guys. And then I will further go off of that and say that like, you basically saying you're being authentic, like that's what I've noticed about you on air. And honestly, why I enjoy your personality on air, and why I almost feel like I'm already your friend, or like when you talk, it's like okay, B Scott's on the air, cool, like it's my bro, like let's just chop it up. So
Yeah.
yeah, a couple things there.
Yeah. So like for me is when you're on the radio, you are supposed to, and even when you're doing this, you're supposed to be like a performative version of yourself. So you are supposed to be putting on a little bit. But for me, it's real easy to do because I've got like a legitimate heart for the subject. And this would be you too. I don't have to even speak
Passion.
to you, but I just know that like I can tell from what you're doing. There's a legitimate passion and heart for the subject matter. And then basically everything else after that kind of takes care of itself, So yeah, it's easy to be real and authentic when you really and authentically like what it is that you're talking about, and like you're really invested in what's going on. So it's kind of an easy thing to do for me. I always wonder what it's like for people who go in different markets, or what it would be like for me if I went to a different market, and what the adjustment would be to having to kind of like ramp up that excitement for a subject that I'm not necessarily as excited about, or the passion for a sports city or a city's sports that I'm not as excited about, which I'm pretty sure I could do it, but it would be different, and it wouldn't come off. It just would not come off the same because this is authentic.
Yeah, and I agree, and that's not a knock on anybody who doesn't cover their own, but like no matter what, like everyone has their hometown or their home team. Like you can work somewhere and grow to love that team, but you're still gonna love like your baby the most. So,
Yeah.
I mean, so that's true. You're born and raised in Houston, right?
Yeah, born and raised in Houston, and just to add to that, like to me, that's a true radio talent though, who can go from market to market, city to city, and really
Yeah.
still not miss a beat. Like I'm more of a I'm decent on the radio, but I'm more of like a townsperson who got
Yeah.
put on the radio, like a local guy who was on the
Yes.
radio, as
I'm kinda
opposed
similar,
to
like, you're one of us in a sense, like,
exactly,
you're a fan, but, like, in a professional manner.
exactly right. That's exactly
And
it.
so, like, you've kinda talked on that a little bit too, and, like, I've found this interesting too, like, as I've, like everything I've done, like, hasn't been planned, like, I'm just born and raised fan, like, start a Twitter, it grows and whatnot, and, like, now, like, I'm, like, looking at ways to, like, take next steps, like, I never thought that I would enjoy being on a camera, but, like, my passion for the Texans has led to this, and I found that I don't mind it, but, there is, like, the fork in the road where it's like, do I want to try and become a journalist and like get a credential and be like professional, or like do I want to embrace the fan part of it? And like to me, like like I've learned if you want to be media and credentialed, it's like you can't be a fan. It's like I don't know if I want that. Like that would kind of kill like what this is. Like this is a fan talking with other fans. So I guess do you kind of have like that same kind of dilemma at times?
So this is a broad conversation because the lines are blurred, like in ways now. Even us doing this right now, like the lines are blurred now in ways that they weren't before and back in the day. Like even when I first started, when you and I first went to college, it felt different. It was different. But I do think that I think that there is a balance, and I think there's also some value in just like transparency and just owning whatever it is that you are. Like I think the worst thing to do is to like pretend to be one thing but not actually be that, or try to like
Mm-hmm.
force it or fake it.
Mm-hmm.
Authenticity, I think, is the key. Like I don't think that there is anything wrong with having biases or like being biased or having like, you know, rooting interest and that sort of thing. I think it's just important to be open about it and to kind of own it and not pretend to be something that you are not, and so like to me there is a balance. There also is like, the space of the work in press and how do you prioritize a content creator like yourself who has a following and people who like care about what's going on over here versus like the big box media, traditional press that works on a deadline and is considered more quote unquote serious. What is
Mm-hmm.
serious? What is serious? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And why? I think the definitions, the lines are blurred and the definitions are changing. And it's just an adjustment that we all have to make. Now, as far as I'm concerned, I'm able to navigate both these spaces because I'm like actually a trained, like all of these like
Yeah.
silly rules to journalism that exist. I'm schooled on them all, so I know how to go in and pretend like I'm not wearing a Houston shirt or not simply know not to wear one, right? And not to cheer in the press box and not to say we and those sorts of things, and to go into an analysis or a question or report with a clear mind. Like I'm just trained to do that, but at the same time, I am from here and I am passionate about the place and I'm oriented here. So I'm able to balance those things because I'm trained to do so. Others like would have to like learn that or start to establish those boundaries of, hey, what do I want to be? How far do I want to go? In this realm, like when I'm at a press conference, I'm not a fan. I'm a media member. When I'm doing
Yeah.
my podcast, I'm maybe a little bit of both. When I'm talking to the players in the locker room, I'm a media member. And I conduct myself in such a way. The lines are blurry and it's an interesting space to navigate. But I always say, man, it ain't the most serious damn thing in the world, man. It's just
Yeah.
football. It's just sports. Everybody lighten up a little bit and let's have a good time.
I mean, I love that answer. I mean, it's a complicated one, but it's very nuanced, and like it sounds like you have that balancing act down very well. And like from my perspective, I enjoy hearing that because like I've learned a lot from being in this realm, and like I start to get worried like it's not so black and white where it's like fan and professional. Like it sounds like you can kind of as long as you kind of have common sense and learn like the do's and the don'ts. So that's encouraging for me to hear because like again, like the fan of me is like the reason why I think this thing works because like I basically interact and engage all day like, and I'm a fan. Like, I'm emotional like, and I also disclaim too like I am a positive fan. Like I know we all fan in our own ways. We have negative fans, positive fans. Like I can't help that I'm like blindly optimistic and always, put faith in whoever. But like I disclaim that too. Like, hey, I may be wrong, but like here's the positive side. So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
no, but
and I think that's another thing that and there is a lane for that, and you have found it, all right, and you're
hmm
thriving in it. There is also like just from a a ideal media standpoint, you do want to have like that balance of, hey, I've got the truth tellers. Not to say that you're not one, but just like I've got the
yeah,
ones that'll say it even if it hurts,
hmm
or will go the other way. They'll zig when they think it's time to zag, if that's what they really believe. They'll hold power accountable. I mean, that's really what journalism is essentially when you get down to it. Whether you're talking about sports or anything more serious, it's about accountability
hmm
and impact and that sort of thing. So like there's room for that. Like everybody, I would say this to kind of wrap that up. Everybody's not doing the same thing. Everybody, there's a
yeah,
lane for most people, as long as you're like honest and
yeah.
as professional as possible. And everybody doesn't have to fit this cookie cutter definition of what sports journalism is supposed to look and sound like.
Well, that's great. I mean, just like how I said, like some fans like this kind of viewpoint, some like that viewpoint. So on the flip side, now you have journalists or reporters that fit, and you kind of align to what those are. And then everyone who's doing that on each side is just being themselves. Like if you're, the contrarian journalist, then just be yourself and you'll have a following that'll fall in line. And, if you're the optimist like me, then, it sounds like that'll work too. But yeah, this is awesome, man. This is like a great, insightful convo, and it's natural. I mean, we haven't really talked about sports that much, but obviously we'll talk about Texans. But since you're, Houston born and raised and Houston sports fan, I'll have to ask you about the Cougs game real quick. What were your thoughts on that?
I was, man, so like it was just a sad way to watch the game to end. Or honestly, it was a sad, like slow burn. It felt like that second half. Honestly, man, at halftime, I felt a little bit disappointed in the fact that they were only up by as many as they were up by, because I felt like, man, and I even
hmm
made this comment like, man, if you went 2 of 14 from three, you don't have to go 7 of 14. You have to go 50%, but like go like 4 of 14 or 5 of
Yeah.
14, like make a couple of more of those threes, and it doesn't feel like you left as much meat on the bone as you did. They took way more shots than Florida
hmm
did in that first half, and didn't have nearly as many points as it felt like they should have. So the first half, to me, even though they were up at halftime, honestly left a lot to be desired. And then there's the slow burn of the second half where they build a lead. They kind of build up on the lead early in the beginning, but then those fouls start happening.
Yep.
And to me, that's when the game completely shifted. That was how Florida was able to shift things into their favor when they kind of mucked up the game, had all of those fouls early in the second half, and then Houston starts to do the same thing. They get their bunch of fouls. They had like 3 fouls in 9 seconds or something ridiculous like that.
Yep.
And then after that, the game was never the same to me. Like it
No.
was it was at that point just a brand new game. It was almost
hmm
like, let's just start over. And then Florida won that, from there. So I was disappointed in that. Like obviously the season itself, really proud of what the Cougs did. Have not gotten this far in our life in my lifetime. I'm just a little after born, just a little bit after the Phi Slamma
Yep.
Jamma era, even though I'm schooled on it. Didn't get to experience that. And honestly, man, if you grew up when I did and when you did, like we know that there was a time when U of H sports was just a non-factor and not a
Yep.
conversation at all. Like in the 90s and early 2000s when I was coming up, man, it just wasn't a thing that you thought about.
hmm
Basketball, football, no sports. Did you think about U of H? You thought about it as a school, as an academic institution, but not as a sports one. So to see
Yeah.
how far they've come in the last decade under Kelvin Sampson is, I mean, I just think a testament to the program and the work that they've done there. But as far as that game itself, man, it was really disappointing. And I'll just say too about the last play. I said this on the radio the other day. The last play where Sharp doesn't get the shot off. I feel bad for Sharp. I think that he maybe misjudged and just like tried to shoot that a little bit early. Probably could have been a little bit more poised in that moment. But I was more surprised that Milos Uzan and LJ Cryer passed up on the opportunity to go and win the game. Like, I respected that they weren't playing hero ball, but it looked like, based off of whatever play that they drew up, they wanted the ball in Uzan's hands.
Yep.
And then he gives the ball up to Cryer, who I'm like, okay, well, great. That's their best perimeter scorer, one of the two of them. So between
and a
the
good
two
ball
of them,
handler too.
yeah, I mean, between ball handling and shooting and like just overall shot creation, those are the two guys.
Yeah.
And then Sharp would be a third option on the perimeter, probably their best pure shooter, but not the guy that I mean, on the
catch and
previous
shoot more so.
The previous possession, he gets stripped trying to drive the ball to the basket, you know,
Yep.
And the ball goes off his leg. So like, I don't really want necessarily the ball in his hand unless it really is a catch and shoot situation, which it looked like it was supposed to be there at the end. Once Uzan and Cryer pass up on the opportunity, but that part was disappointing to me too, because in that moment, I would have wanted one of those two guys taking the shot, or at least like Cryer didn't even dribble; he just swung the ball. You know, it was Uzan.
I guess like part of that could be like the defense, like they took both those options away.
I think that was part of it.
Maybe a mix of the two, or
I think it was part of the defense taking. And honestly, those might have been the correct basketball plays, right?
Yeah,
like, hey, let's not play here. And I'm saying this like I kind of respect it if it is, but as a fan, as a guy, I'm sitting over there watching it on my recliner over there with my feet up, with my son's Black Panther blanket over on me. It's very easy to armchair coach and say, hey, why don't you take that shot? Why don't you take that shot? But I'm just being honest on how I felt in the moment. I'm like, hey, guys, let's go get it. And then for it to end the way it did, kind of reinforced what I'm thinking in real time. Like, hey, go get it. You know. So credit to the Cougs for the run that they had. They deserve a lot of credit for it. But that was a gut punch. That was a gut punch for sure.
It's tough because it was still an amazing season, and I thought they were the better team the entire game, outplayed them, and like Florida's biggest lead was 2 points, which they led like 6-4, and then like late in the game, like barely even led. And then
I did the math. I did the math, Garrett. They led for a total of 1 minute and 3 seconds of the game.
That's like, I'm still like, I was at the game, and they don't tell you on StubHub when you buy the tickets what section you're in. I was in the thick of it, bro. Like all these annoying ass Gator fans. And by the way, they have like that Seven Nations Army song, like that. I forget the band, but that's like their like mantra. The stadium was playing it nonstop, bro. I was like, this is messed up. But yeah, so like my experience was the same as yours. Like the fouls changed the game. And, you know, I never once felt worried. I felt the same way going into half, like, okay, we should be up by more, but we're good. And then, you know, we're up early. And then even like last possession, like, oh, we're good. But, you know, they weren't impressive. Like all their points were free throws. Like they didn't like make all these shots. Like we clamped them, bro. Like, yeah, it was like the refs, the two different officiating, like, you know, letting them play and then overcorrecting, but like overcorrecting in the start of the second half so much in our favor. And it's like, then they got that tech, so they felt bad. And then they like overcorrected on their end. And it was just.
Well, all of it, to me though, like, because I think each side could make the case of the whistle just being too whistle happy. You know, Florida early in the second half. And then of course, U of H has this argument, but man, it disrupted the flow of the game. And that flow was clearly in the favor of the Cougs at the time, and it took them out of it, man. It took them out, and they were already struggling to shoot the ball, but at least the defense was frenetic the way that it had been all season long. And I could tell, like, once they get those 3 fouls in those 9 seconds, it looked like they just started defending a little bit differently. You know, not
well, and then
like
the players
like
too. Like you're used to it being called one way, you're playing a certain way, and like you can't just up and change your style. Like, and by the time you realize, oh, now they're calling it this way, it's like, well, it's too late.
Yeah. No, it was real tough because it took them out of their a big part of their identity as a team, which is being physical.
And you had guys on the bench too, right? Like, I mean, all of our best players were on.
Yeah. No, it was real tough, especially for it to be in a championship game, for it to play out like that, man. for as euphoric and as high of a moment as that was to beat Duke in the Final Four, man, this is like the worst way to lose. Best way to win and worst way to lose. Best way to win against Duke, worst way to lose against
It was
Florida.
like a slow, just like out of nowhere. It's like, wait, we lost. Like,
Yep.
and like even the Florida players were like, we just won. Like you could
Yep.
see the look on their face when they won. They're like, holy shit, we just won.
Yeah, they were
Like they were
they were
shocked.
outplayed. I thought they were for the most part outplayed for the night. You know,
100%.
and it didn't matter because they won.
Yeah. Well, hey, I know you got to leave soon. Are you good for like another 5 minutes or
Yeah,
so?
yeah. Let's go. Let's do it.
Okay. I know it's a Texans podcast, but you're from Houston, so we had to touch on that. But also too, I'm sorry I didn't mention your handle. I think it's just at Brandon Scott. I got it on the bottom there.
Yeah,
On Twitter.
at Brandon K Scott on Twitter, X, whatever you're calling it these days, but you can find me there at Brandon K Scott.
And then also kind of shout out to, I know you write for the Chronicle a little bit, and then I believe you have a podcast as well.
Yeah, so I do the B Block. And honestly, I would say check out the B Block podcast because there's going to be a kind of special announcement that I got coming pretty soon. So y'all be on the lookout for that on the B Block podcast. That's my own kind of personal pet project. But yeah, man, at the Chronicle, it's a little complicated. I do what I do over at the Chronicle is almost completely different. It's funny, man. What I'm known for and what I actually do are not exactly the same. I'm on the radio, obviously, and y'all see me and hear me and everything. But what I'm actually paid to do, is a much more behind the scenes kind of strategic role, administrative type of role of what I actually do. My job description and things that I actually do, which I'm not going to bore everybody with. But at the Chronicle, though, I do like some of their newsletters that go into people's inboxes and their app alerts that go to the Houston Chronicle app and like manage their homepage, back read their copy, some of their extra eyes and ears, and that's not just for sports; that's for all of their copy. News and all of their different sections. So it's a little bit of a different and more expansive kind of role. Whereas at 610, it's kind of really more specific to what we're doing in sports.
Man, you're a jack of all trades, man. That's impressive. I knew you had some affiliation, but I didn't know you were doing all that. That's awesome. Kudos to you.
Yeah, man. Well, and that's what I was getting at earlier about the news background, man. I can cover basically. I'm not an expert really on anything, but I can cover anything. I know enough about a lot to where I can at least ask questions and write about it and edit copy about it and that sort of thing. So
that's good. Man. I mean, it makes and it helps with radio too because you're well versed. So it's like you know what you're talking about. So, but yeah, I mean, we'll get into Texans. I know I could talk to you for forever just to kind of shooting the shit. I mean, it's been a great convo.
Hey, I was gonna say, man, once you started talking shop, man, I can talk shop longer than I can talk anything, like the business.
Yeah,
where it's going, where it's headed.
Yep.
Like the sensibilities of
kind of like this
a fan trying to become a journalist or a journalist who's really a fan, and how
maybe that's a separate podcast that you and I can do. Like I can hop on your show, or we can do another one with mine, and like have like a laid out topic because those are things that I think about a lot, and I think it's very interesting because I agree. I guess changing, and this is like, yeah.
Yeah, no, we can do that. We'll powwow about that and figure something out.
Okay, well, that sounds good. Well, yeah. Before I let you go here, I'll keep you for another 5 minutes if that's okay. I know you said you got somewhere to go. Just real quick, Texans, man. I mean, how do you feel about the offseason? And then after that, we'll go on the draft.
I just think, man, it's funny how differently you can go about an offseason on a year-to-year basis, right? Like last year, it was, hey, let's go all out and trade for these pieces, for these weapons to support C.J. Stroud after a really encouraging and promising rookie year, which I think for the most part, everybody was like, hell yeah, let's go do that. You want to trade for Joe Mixon? Like we thought that you needed a running back. How you going to get it? Didn't know Joe Mixon was available, but yeah, I'll take some Joe Mixon. Stefan Diggs. I know a lot of people didn't like that trade and didn't like the compensation and, the opportunity cost of not drafting, getting a first round pick and also like who some of those players became, and they're looking at it like, man, we did that for 8 games of Stefan Diggs. But I think you can justify the all-in nature of what they were trying to do last year. And then you come to this year and you're like, well, where's all that energy at? Where are those big swings? Where's all of that putting them on the table like you were last year? I thought we were trying to go out there and win the Super Bowl. What's changed? You had the same type of season, results wise, right? Same exact record, same exact results. I know a lot of conversation about it being a down year for Stroud, and the offense obviously had its issues. They fired their offensive coordinator and their offensive line coach, but it was still a successful year. Like, why aren't you spending up all of this money and going out and getting all of these pieces and stuff? And I'm like, nah, you know what? Every offseason doesn't necessarily call for the same thing and doesn't necessarily have the same agenda items on it.
Yep.
And I think what they were trying to do last year made a lot of sense, because at that time, okay, and we're talking about last year now, at that time, they thought they had the offensive line that was going to get them there, and unfortunately, they were wrong. They were wrong, right? And so that's unfortunate, but now they've got bigger issues or other issues to address. And I see that comment about not ever liking the Stephon Diggs trade because of the options of wide receiver. That's fair. I think that's fair, but you also understand the logic of it, right? Like, if you're talking about who would you rather have in like 1 year, you're trying to go win the Super Bowl right now. That makes sense to say, hey, I'd rather get this guy that I've seen be an All-Pro before over like this idea of a first-round wide receiver who may or may not be good.
But they also valued that veteran role. I mean, like, I say this and people like act like it's not a big deal, but I still feel like you have to factor in what we got out of that will still reap the benefits from years to come. We all saw like the practices, him teaching receivers routes and teaching DBs. Like, I feel like that bled over, but now Nico can be that, veteran guy. So I think that needs to be mentioned as well.
It was an all-in move. It's an all-in move. I think for fans and even like media, sometimes it's easy to like maybe look at a draft chart or think further into the future than say is maybe even necessary for a football team. Like, and we've heard Nick Caserio, I think, talk about this, and others talk about this, like looking at team building through 2 and 3 year windows. Like 2-3 years, that's all you really got. That's all you're really talking about, And so beyond that, it's a lot of guessing. So do you want to guess that your first round? I don't mean to relitigate last year's trade for Stephon Diggs, but it's like, do you want to guess on what this could be, or do you want? Hey, I know that this guy is good right now, and that we've also got a young receiver that we just paid a lot of money in, Nico Collins, and we've got Tank Dell coming back, and so like at the time it made a lot of sense. I think even if you didn't think it made sense, you could justify it. I tend to agree with a lot of people that are like, hey, the trade, didn't like the trade, and I see the part about restructuring the contract. The restructuring the contract part I didn't get it all, but maybe you're doing that to make the guy happy. But I say all that to say, this year though, it felt like the priority should have been about remaking the offensive line that you thought maybe before was already made, and that looks different. That looks different. I've got some things that I prefer they had done that they didn't, and I don't have enough information to say that they didn't try to do these things, so I don't necessarily have a reason to be upset about it. Like, I think that maybe there are some things that they tried to do that didn't necessarily work, or some swings that they took that they didn't necessarily land, but ultimately they feel good about the moves that they've made along the offensive line. I am overall, if I'm being honest with you, I am overall underwhelmed by the offseason that they've had so far, but we haven't had the draft yet. And usually it's not until training camp to where I start actually getting a sense for how these pieces are going to come together anyway, and so it could very well be that the biggest move that they made in the offseason is not one that really requires a lot of player breakdown. It could be the coaching thing, right? The new offensive coordinator with Nick Caley and the new offensive line coach, and You still got Stroud, you still got Joe Mixon, you still got Nico Collins, and so like the core bases of your main playmakers are there, and maybe they're just coached better, and that's the difference. We shall see, but it is interesting to watch how different this offseason has looked versus how the last offseason looked.
That's awesome too. Like, and I kind of realize that too. Like, as fans, like as we go into an off season, we always want to look back on the previous year to kind of guess what's going to happen. But like each year is different, and it could be too. Like, yes, the circumstances are different, but also maybe they're learning too. Like, they're still DeMeco and Casario are still early in their experience together, so maybe they're making adjustments as they go as well. But again, checking in. Are you good for one more question on draft before you head up?
For sure.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, with that being said, like I think most fans agree with you too. Like it's kind of underwhelming. We thought it was kind of like last year with the interior D line. We thought that they would go big and get some big names, but they kind of just got a bunch of average to above average interior D linemen who ended up being great. And it seems like the same approach on the O line, but obviously it's still a need. So with the draft, I mean, is there certain names that you would like for us to get? If not, obviously positions, I think we probably know those. And are you beholden to a certain position in a certain round, or what's your philosophy head into the draft?
Yeah, I mean, so I mean that's the tough part about picking in the 20s is you're going to be somewhat at the mercy of what's available to you once you get there. But like the name that I'm probably highest on for what they need, and it's not because I think this is necessarily the best player in the draft or even necessarily the best player that'll be available at that time, but Tyler Booker seemed like the guard from Alabama seems to be, at least to me, if he's available to you at 25, that seems to be the no-brainer pick to me. Like I wouldn't think too hard about it. I would just go and draft the kid and just insert him into my offensive line and not just give him the job, but draft him with the expectation that he's going to go in there and earn that job. And hopefully some of these other guys that have either been signed or traded for on the interior are more depth pieces than they are actual, guys that you're going to have to rely on, save for injury. So Tyler Booker, Gray Zabel, the offensive lineman from North Dakota State. I have been paying attention to, I mentioned Seth earlier, somebody that I, obviously respect and listen to on these. He has not been as high on Zabel as I maybe was expecting them to be. And so like that has kind of made me sour on him just a little bit, but I wouldn't be mad at it. I feel like this is the type of swing that you do need to take though. Maybe you feel like it's safer to go with a weapon there, with a wide receiver, if it's, Emeka Buka, or if Matthew Golden somehow miraculously is still around. I highly doubt that he's there. Like that part of it obviously changes the conversation, because if he's there, then I'd probably draft him instead.
Would you trade up to 20 to get him?
No, I would say I probably wouldn't, but I wouldn't be surprised if Nick Casario.
We got some extra draft capital at the LT trade.
Yeah, if Nick Casario falls in love with him, like I like him a lot. I don't really love anybody in this draft enough to trade up for. I really don't. Now, I'm not gonna be like, if he does it, I'm not gonna come over here and be like, man, I can't believe he did that. He traded up for. I just personally wouldn't do it. But if he wants to do it, more power to him. And there's a weapon, and you certainly need weapons. So he's kind of like if he's there, all right, maybe I'm singing a little bit of a different tune. I just don't expect him to be there, and I also don't necessarily expect him to draft up to trade up to draft him. But if he is, that definitely makes it interesting. I have been making this point on the radio as far as like drafting offensive linemen. I know I said I want Tyler Booker, but I have had questions about their ability to draft and develop offensive linemen.
It's fair.
The comment that you just put up there about Kenyon Green 2.0. Like I don't have a reason to believe that he is Kenyon Green 2.0, but I also can't blame somebody for saying that, and it's hard.
We got scar tissue, man.
That's exactly it. It's scar tissue. It's shrapnel. It's the residual effect of whiffing on a first-round interior offensive lineman. And so now you have the legitimate question of, do the people who are entrusted with the future of the franchise that I love, do I trust them to draft and develop offensive linemen? Which I think is a fair question for people to ask, even if even if this guy is nothing like King and Green, or even if this has nothing to do with King and Green, but it's the same people in charge that are drafting.
Well, I think
So
the combine stuff is like what really got people on to compare him to Kenyon Green because he didn't test well and neither did Kenyon. And so, they're both guards at bigger schools. I mean, it's fair. I mean, but like you said, like it's whether you trust. I do trust. Like I know there's the past history, but like if they take them, I hate my approach to this because like I feel like we're in a good position where like I'm cool with like almost any of the options that are being thrown out there.
yeah, and now I'm also like a little bit different on like O linemen and how they test at the combine. And I'm a little weary on the combine anyway, man. Just as it's
Underwear
entertaining.
Olympics.
Yeah, it's entertaining. Like, and so if you're just watching it as an entertainment experience, then that's fine. I am hesitant to just like glean too much from it about a specific player, as opposed to, hey, what did they do when you saw them play football?
Well, the Casario and DeMeco, they more so use it for interviews, and a reason why I think Tyler Booker is very likely is Swarmy. He's like the epitome of swarm, and then
Yeah.
he played big time football at Bama. He plays guard. We need a right guard. Like he's pretty much a plug and play guy.
Yeah. Gets real high notes for like some of the intangible and leadership stuff, like grade A
captain,
type of presence. So yeah.
And Casario tends to like the value guys that slip from combine numbers. Look at Kamari Lassiter. Like we see it as a good thing. Like, all right, y'all, he could be, if he would have tested well, he could have been a top 10 pick.
That's like, a great point. I didn't even think about that.
They were probably happy as shit that happened, bro.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that as far as the testing and how Kamari Lassiter, because there was a lot of that. I mean, you remember
they don't give a damn about that. They want the tape. That's all they care about.
I remember that night, man, when they drafted Kamari Lassiter. A lot of us in the media are in there in the like little media workroom where we get ready to talk to everybody after the fact, and we kind of just all looked around and said, 4'6". Like what? Like really? Like we weren't like killing it, but we were like really like curious, like, does this make sense? And man, if he didn't go out there and ball and like play his ass off, so don't believe everything you see at the combine.
Yeah. Well, hey, I know it's been a long one here. We went over time. I guess I'm trying to think of just one more quick hitter question. I guess just give me one other name that you would love the Texans to draft in the second or third round, and then after that, just shout out what you got, and we'll take it from there.
Oh man, like honestly, like I gave you the main ones between Booker and Golden. Now, past that, I'm gonna be honest with you, man. As for the type of basketball life that we've been living this year, I have not looked too far past the first round, and I don't know if I will before the draft. I will be pleasantly surprised with whoever they draft. I'm not the biggest like draft guy. I had to kind of become that in the time when they were struggling. But man, I'll say this about me, so just so people know: when football season ends and basketball season comes, I'm all in. When basketball season ends and baseball season comes, I'm all in on baseball. And then when baseball season starts to end, and whenever football season starts, I'm all in. I'm the seasonal sports fan. So
I love it.
So that's where I'm at. I'll be pleasantly surprised with whatever they find in the second round. I'll be just as interested as everybody else to see it.
Well, that goes back to the beginning of the show when you said be authentic. You could have like lied and said something, but you're like, I'm gonna be real, and like that's what's up. I appreciate like people respect that.
Yeah, and honestly, I'll be not just that. I'm looking at some of the names that people are dropping out there, and I'll be like interested to see where some of those names fall, and like what kind of sense do they make for the Texans? Like I'm here for that. For like not me necessarily being the authority voice that knows it all, but all of us kind of chiming in with what we're passionate about and what we've researched. Everybody goes down their own rabbit holes about a thing.
Yeah, but we get emotionally attached too. Like we feel like we're experts. It's part of the fun, but then like when you don't get them, like we don't freaking know, bro. Like it's fun, but like it's good to remember. Like so, you're in a better position. You're not like emotionally invested. Like you haven't grinded all this film for no reason.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It would have taken me away from basketball, which I would not allow. So, but I will
Rockets,
be.
Baby.
Yeah, represent.
I need to get you one of these, man. The 281 shirt.
Oh man, I should show you my. Damn it! Do I have my?
They should have gave you one of mine, right? At 6'10". I gave Sean some to.
I should show you my Summit. I just bought a Summit sweatshirt. Matter of fact, I wore it on the air yesterday, but it's a sweatshirt. But I went on like a really unnecessary spree at Toyota Center a few days ago. I was at the game and I'm just walking the concourse. This is a very non-professional media thing to do. So I just, tuck my bag into my shopping bag into
You
my
took your
backpack.
media hat off and put your fan hat on.
Well, I mean, I was able to buy it, but once I bought it, I didn't want to like walk into the press conference with all of this gear. So I had to kind of like stuff it into my bag. But man, I bought this red sweater that's got like, how sweet it is right here. And then on the back, it's got the Summit logo on the back of it. And then the championship, not icons, logos and stuff from the 94, 95 on the arms. Man, it's legit. It's legit. So I'm geared up, just not today, but I'm definitely geared up. I like that one too, though. I like that one too, that you got the 2A1. So
yeah, I'll get you on. This is on my site. And you should, I gave Sean a bunch of shirts to give to you guys. I don't know if you ever got one, but if you want, yeah. I'll DM you
today. I will be hitting Sean up about, hey, what happened to my shirt?
I don't mean to out him on that. I don't mean to out him on that. Sean's been really cool. I'll DM you and just pick one on my site and I'll send it your way, man. That's like one thing as a fan, like I've noticed like there's not a lot of like of this legitimate, graphic tee stuff. So that's kind of been something I've been trying to provide as well. But yeah, B Scott, appreciate it, man. We'll have to do it again. If you ever need a guest on your pod, I mean, I'm surprised it's already 46 minutes. I mean, it felt like it was 10, but really enjoyed the convo, man. Yeah, until next time, if you got anything to shout out on the way out, just let them know. And then once you're ready, you can roll.
Yeah, no, B Block Podcast and of course Sports Radio 610 on In the Loop. That is every Tuesday at 11. And The Drive every Wednesday at 4:40. So y'all come rock with us.
All right, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you for having me.
Yes, sir. All right, man. That was awesome. That was a great combo. We kind of had this like normal, dialogue on just whatever. And then he kind of stayed longer because we had to get to sports. And it sounded like we could have talked sports for a while, but shout out all the guys in the chat, Engineer, the usuals, Forever Royal, Brandon, appreciate you guys. J-Dog, what up, brother? We got Wesley Reyes on Facebook, what's going on? And Unknown, so we got the usual suspects. Appreciate y'all tuning in. But yeah, I mean, that was a great convo. If y'all got any, Q&A on here, I'll feel free to answer some for a bit before we sign off here in a little bit. But let's see. Brandon says, I'm going to be in left field if anybody needs me. Left field of where? At the I call it the Dyke Box, Dyken Park. I probably shouldn't call it the Dyke Box, but Minute Maid Park, formerly. Brandon says, I still have newspaper clippings from the Rockets victory in 94. Yeah, that was dope, man. But yeah, the Cougs game was rough. I was there. We kind of touched on that. Astros, man, they got me stressing. They obviously, today was a terrible loss. Terrible loss. Giving up a grand slam. You're up 5-0, grand slam 5-4. Go back in the ninth and tack on a run. So now it's 6-4. Okay, you got Abreu since Hader pitched 2 innings yesterday, and he blows it and walks in the game-winning run. That was terrible. And then they blew it the same night the Cougs blew it. They got it's just tough. I mean, I know it's early, and I think they'll be fine, but we saw that same stuff last year, like losing these games you should not lose. And I feel like a good team doesn't do that, and it comes back to bite you, and it did in the playoffs last year. Bullpen melting down. Shout out Colin Franta. He says, love it. He is a CF Visuals _ on Instagram. He does great job on graphic design. Y'all should hit him up. Henry Jack says, can the Texans draft Ohio State running back Quinshon Judkins in the second round at pick 58 overall? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I know we have our, priorities with O-line, receiver, and interior D-line. But I mean, if they feel like they have, a bucket of receivers they can get in the third or fourth, or, we have a bunch of these picks in the middle rounds, or if we trade back and stack more second round picks, I could see them doing that. I could see them trading out of the first, and now you have 3 or 4 second round picks. And then maybe trading back up into the second, and rather than having a bunch of, fifth, seventh round picks, like kind of cash out and getting that sweet spot, second, third round. That's what they call the sweet spot of the draft, the meat of the draft. You can get a lot of good value there. I mean, look at last year, Kamari Lassiter, Kalen Bullock, Blake Fisher. I mean, those are three great players in those middle rounds. Brandon says the diking them down arena. I like that. Colin says, don't know if you covered this today, but what is the Texans' biggest need in the draft? Yeah, I mean, obviously, you got to say O-line, but yeah, it's definitely O-line, but that doesn't mean I'm not married to you have to draft an O-line in the first round. I'm cool if they draft a receiver. I'm cool if they draft a defensive tackle, honestly. If it's one of those three, my thing is those three positions, as long as they're addressed in the first 3 rounds in some order, I'm cool with it. And I think that's kind of, I suspect, what they will do, honestly. Engineer says, I'm honestly over Jim Crane and the coaching staff. I'll watch them when they stop letting go players go. Yeah, it's tough too. I mean, it's early, but you see like the the hit leaders, it's like, Bregman, Tucker, Springer, Altuve. But baseball also too, man. It's just like, I love it, but it's not like football, but it's just like a weird sport. I mean, like even that inning today against the Mariners, I mean, you had that ball hit to Paredes at third, and the guy on third is off the bag, so he goes to tag him. It's called out. It's reviewed, and they say he's safe. But like, if that runner wasn't there, then he just throws it to first and gets the out. I mean, it's just, and then that ends up being the thing. And then after that, we had a strikeout that didn't get called a strikeout. That got called a walk because it was a clear strikeout. That's an out. So I mean, all this little stuff and the way the ball bounces, it's a frustrating sport, man. Lou the Foo says, I wouldn't mind if the Texans move up to 11 if Warren falls. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that they would do that. But yeah, I mean, I don't rule out anything, honestly. I mean, they've shown that they're all in. I've talked about this. We all kind of talked about this, but ever since the loss to the Chiefs and end of that season, DeMeco, mostly DeMeco, he seems like, his first couple years, like our perception of him is like he's a player's coach. He's a nice guy. He's loyal, yada, yada, yada. And then he up and fires Bobby. And then he cuts Shaq and trades Kenyon. And then he trades LT. And it's like, this motherfucker, sorry for my language, this guy, he's all in. Like he's done playing Mr. Nice Guy. He's realized the sense of urgency on the window is closing with C.J. Stroud's rookie year contract. And so he's being aggressive. Like he's not, it's like no more Mr. Nice Guy. So, so that being said, like, I wouldn't be surprised if they're hyper aggressive and make crazy trades. I could even see them like trading up if Will Campbell falls a little bit and getting him, that might be something that happens. It's just, you kind of wonder just based off the guys they sign, but I mean, those could just be backups, but who knows, man. Unknown says, yo, I'm back. My fault. I left, had to go to the store. It's all good, man. I appreciate your support, Unknown. You're a real one, man. You always try and tune in and appreciate the comments, but yeah, as far as Texans, I've kind of come to a place with the draft. Like we talk about it every week, every day. And, I kind of told B Scott, like there's not a lot of players that I would be upset with us taking, honestly, in the first couple rounds. Like there's a lot of good names. There's a lot of good players at receiver. There's a lot of good players at O-line that you have like true guards. You have tackles who can play guard, which that would be a great option. You could get a guy and hopefully he plays guard right away and then can kick out to tackle later, which that kind of makes sense. You get a versatile guy. And we sit here and try and guess and think all this stuff. And then honestly too, like Caserio, I don't think he has like these predetermined plans, like this or that. He strikes me like from listening to all of his interviews and about, how things are done. He is like, he's just a value whore. We've talked about it, but he kind of lets things come to him. So, rather than him going and being, aggressive and needy and vulnerable and kind of like showing your hand, he lets people do that to him. And then he's like, oh, that's a good deal. I'll take it. So like, I feel like a lot of these trades that happened, like last year with the Vikings, I don't think he was actively shopping that trade. I feel like they came to him. He's like, all right, cool. Good deal. And then even the C.J. Gardner-Johnson trade with Kenyon Green, DeMeco Ryans multiple times at the owners meeting or the NFL meeting last week talked about how, they asked about that trade, and he's like, I didn't even know about it. Like, he was like us, like, he wasn't a free agent, so he wasn't even on his radar. And then all of a sudden, Nick comes to him, he's like, hey, you want this guy? And he's like, hell yeah. So it sounded like, and then hearing Nick talk about it, like, yeah, that was a good opportunity. Like, we heard it and did it. And same with LT. Like, I think, I don't know that they were the initiators on LT. He made it sound like it was a good opportunity. Like the Commanders just came to him, like they needed it, and he said, "Hey, it works for us." Yeah, I mean, obviously he may have been aggressive himself, but he strikes me as the guy who, and he says this too, like he said that in relation to the Laramie Tunsil and the Kenyon Green trades recently at these meetings, that we'll listen to anybody and anything, and they've made that known with obviously by talking, but their actions, like people know, like it's like in a fantasy league. Like, I mean, you got some owners who won't trade shit. They're paranoid. Because he was actually asked about trading within the division. I forget the trade on that, which was or signing players, or he was asked about, do you worry about dealing with teams in the division, which was the Christian Kirk and trade with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and Mark Vandermeer had asked him that, and he said he had never worked with Gladstone, the GM of the Jaguars, but he said, like, I'm down to do business with anybody. Like, I don't care about any of that stuff. And he said, that's me and my mindset, but that's not to say that's how other people think. So some GMs won't deal with other GMs within their division. Some just don't do shit anyways. But it's like in fantasy football, like we all have our leagues where you have like only 3 or 4 guys or 5 or 6 guys that are actually down to trade, and only a handful are actually like logical and reasonable. Some people just don't do it. So I mean, it's kind of the same thing in the league. And eventually after years of this, you kind of know who is down and who's not. So like, by being an active guy, people know to hit him up. And so, and he'll evaluate every deal. And if it makes sense, he'll do it. And if it doesn't, he won't. So with that being said, the whole point is, going into this draft, we could all think he's doing this. He could think he's doing this. And even DeMeco and Nick have both said this, like, you can do all this stuff, but like, even they are surprised by what transpires on draft day, because it's just dynamic. People hit you up, the board falls. So obviously we have nothing but time on our hands, so we're just analyzing situations. But it's a good reminder, like, hey, come draft day, anything could happen, bro. And that's good to know as a fan. Like, he's going to take all calls, and he'll make a move that makes sense. And he definitely trades in the mid to late round, so he'll be trading a lot then. So it'll be great to see. Cuts by Harvey on IG says, great content, Texans fan here. Appreciate it, brother. That means a lot, man. Thanks for tuning in. And then on IG, Gasway, she says, why trade your Pro Bowl O-line? Maybe he sold him with those yellow flags, LOL. Yeah, it was mostly a cap thing, in my opinion, to free up cap. But I think the culture and stuff like that and penalties was a side benefit. But it's definitely part of the puzzle. Engineer says, I'd be down with even Mario Hampton in the first. Yeah, that's tough for me to take a running back in the first. But who knows? Unknowns. Again, I wouldn't rule it out, but that's just me personally. But yeah, who knows? Unknown says, if Banks makes it to 18, Nick better be on the phone trying to trade up. Yeah, I wouldn't hate that. Beast could start right away. Versatile. Unknown says, because Seattle will pick him if not. That's true, to kind of know, where people are. And he seems to kind of think that way. When he talks about drafting Blake Fisher last year, he noticed like a lot of tackles hadn't been drafted. And so they were the first one to start the trend. And he's how once they did it, there was a run right after them. So there are like these themes too, like, it's random. You don't know, but like teams may defer on a certain position. And, eventually you have to be the first one to, and it's just like, again, it's like a fantasy draft. Like, every draft is different. Like, you may be in a league where people don't draft quarterbacks until round 5, but like once that first one's taken, boom, now like the whole direction of the draft changes. That can go for any position. So that's part of the puzzle too. So that's kind of funny that I've had a couple realizations that this can be related to fantasy football, which, I mean, I think I sometimes do this, and a lot of us made too. Like, think that all these moves are like planned out and methodical, but like it's just like us. Like, you just kind of like just talking and things happen. It's not like, I'm going to do this, and that. So that's good because that means you're adaptable. You kind of adjust to what's out there. You're dynamic, which is what we weren't on offense last year with Slowick, and is why he got fired. So you need to be adaptable and flexible, not only in your play calling and your play style, but also in your roster management and in the draft. Unknown says kind of has that flexibility like Titus. Yeah, there's a bunch of those tackle guards with flexibility. Brandon says Titus tried to prove his flexibility by becoming quarterback too. Yeah, he was a quarterback in high school, and then he went to Alabama State, right? Because of that, he was overlooked, and they kind of like tricked him into playing tackle by getting him to play tight end first, knowing he'd play tackle the whole time. And I want to say he was a right tackle because a majority of his career, his quarterback was left-handed. So Unknown says, nah, Brandon, he trying to play running back, trying to take Mixon's job. That's funny. Lou the Foo says, I think more wide receivers fall versus O-line. Who would you pick if available? Ibuka, Burden, Loveland, or Hampton? That's tough. Ibuka, Burden, Loveland, or Hampton? I would probably go with Ibuka, and that's me basing it off of position, and I like Ibuka better than Burden. I am not very high on Luther Burden. I think he is a screen merchant. I think he's good, but he's not late first good. I think he's being overrated. Doesn't have a great route tree. I understand. A lot of it was his usage in 2024, but even 2023, I feel like his route tree wasn't very extensive. Like it's mostly bubble screens and slot fades, honestly. But I mean, he's a special talent, but I don't feel like he's a fit in our offense either. And Ibuka, I've harped on the, slot receiver stuff. He's like 80% slot usage in his career. He could bump outside. I would prefer to have like a true Z receiver, like Matthew Golden, but he'll probably be gone. And so, I wouldn't be mad if we took Ibuka. I could see them doing it, and they could kind of, mix Kirk and him potentially between the two, slot and outside. But to me, it's not the most prudent way to go about it. But the fact that he is like the swarm guy, like I kind of had like a realization listening to all those interviews last week that they kept hammering home culture that like they're going to draft guys. The first prerequisite for them for anybody is if they fit their culture, like in the draft, especially like, first 3-4 rounds. They're not just going to get character issue guys. And Ibuka is somebody, him and Tyler Booker, like two, prime example of swarm candidates, team captains, played at big schools, great work ethic, all that stuff. So Unknown says, my fault if I got y'all confused. I didn't know Titus played QB. I thought we were talking about the game versus the Lions. Oh, yeah, no, he did play QB, but yes, the play where he tried to take the ball. So maybe he had a flashback. He had a little PTSD and thought he was a quarterback in that play. That was crazy. Forever Royal says, facts, when you put on Burden tape, you don't strike me as a first rounder. Yeah, man. I mean, it's not to say he isn't good, but like I just don't get the hype on that. And then I know a lot of people are high on Savion Williams. I think he's kind of overrated too. I think he's a special talent, but like he's basically playing a Deebo Samuel role, but he's like 6'4", 220. He's like a big, tall, skinny X receiver playing out of the backfield. Like that might have worked in college in the Big 12, but I don't see that kind of body style, lining up and doing all that in the NFL. Like his frame is not built to do that. Like whereas Deebo does it, but he's like, 6 foot, like 200. He's like a bowling ball. Or he's like 220, 6 foot. And so, I think he again is a great talent. For Savion Williams, I feel like he's, being a little bit overvalued, but then particular to the Texans, he's not a fit, I don't think. And so there's a couple of people that like I kind of feel that way about, but at this point in time, I mean, we've all talked about a lot of the prospects out there. Bray Rob says for sure on IG. Just Jordy says I'm ready for the draft. We need Golden. Facts. That would be dope. Gasway She says Texans Super Bowl 26 our time and Dell comes back in the playoffs. That would be super dope. And he says, and we win the Super Bowl just like I explained. Yeah, it could happen, man. That would be sick. But yeah, I think let's see. Lou the Foo says Kaylee loves his tight end. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't rule out a tight end. I just don't know about the first. So what I look at too is when I look at like positions we could draft is obviously tight end. Okay, who's on the roster? You got Dalton Schultz, Cade Stover, and Brevin Jordan. And then I look at like the contract, how much time's left, the cost to get rid of them. Schultz, the only thing that would make sense to move on from Schultz, you can't cut him, would be to trade him, and it would have to be post June 1st. And then Stover, you got a rookie contract. You just drafted him. You're developing him. You wouldn't move on from him. Brevin has a lot of promise. They're high on him. You just extended him. You're not going to move on from him. But you also look at like how many of these positions teams normally keep at the 53-man roster, which is when, obviously before training camp or in training camp when it ends before the season starts in August is when you cut from, I think it's like 90, whatever it is, 90 something. Say like you're 90, whatever it is from OTAs all the way through. And then you whittle it down to that number. And so obviously you can have more up until that point. But like when we're looking at like actual, like all those names like Schultz, Stover, Brevin, like you project them to be on the 53-man roster. The only thing is you can maybe trade Schultz. And it sounds like it's kind of rare to do it post June 1st. But anyways, teams keep 3 to 4 tight ends on the active roster. So we could add a tight end and keep Schultz, or we could add a tight end and move on from him. Same thing at running back. You look at, I think it's like 4 to 5, or I need to look at the numbers, but I think it's like 6. But we have a lot of existing guys. We got Mixon, Pierce. You got British Brooks coming back. You got Dare. You got Jawar Jordan. And then we just signed Jacob Johnson. I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, but he's considered fullback, running back room. So you got a certain amount of numbers. So again, just because they're on the roster now doesn't mean you keep them all later in the year. But also too, I mean, like you got to look at it in this lens too, just because like, and I was kind of looking at it like, oh, we already got these guys who can't. But like I mentioned earlier, the fact that DeMeco and Caserio are all in, if you find someone there, you can draft them and then move on from one of the guys. Like if you draft a running back, that could be now, okay, hey, now we're just going to trade Damian. Like if you find a replacement, you get it, and then you offload with the asset after. So that could be something on that as well. So tight end and running back to me are like two areas where they could definitely improve. And I think if they get the chance, they will. I think they're hyper aggressive, man. Like there's no love lost now. Like DeMeco's all about winning. He's not worried about any of that stuff. So the can on IG says he can't hear me. I mean, can y'all hear me? I feel like most people have been listening to me. I'm not sure what's going on there, but Unknown says, I was watching SNL today, and on there, someone in the comments said take Ibuka at 25, and then if Booker falls out of the first, trade up for him in the second. It's a dream. I don't think it's going to happen, but good idea. Yeah, I mean, I think they'll be aggressive. Brandon says, I still think Dante Thornton is Savion Williams. People want Savion Williams to be. Yeah, that's true. Dante Thornton, that's the big tall guy at Tennessee, right? He's kind of like he's a great value. Lou the Foo, great breakdown on the tight ends. For sure, man. Thanks for the comment or question. Unknown says, Damian low-key, my favorite current player in the Texans. His rookie season had me crying at one point. Yeah, I mean, I still think he can be revitalized in this offense, running more gap schemes. So G says, do you think Espada is giving off Steven Silas vibes? And the Texans question is, okay, Espada, man, I was like, it was a super slow start last year. And I was like a day or two into, I told myself last year when it came to that White Sox series, the worst team in the league, if we didn't like win that series, I was full on the fire Espada, and we barely won that series. But he's a young first time, second year now manager learning his way. So obviously he's still learning his way, but I don't know, man. Like it's early in the season, but like obviously if you ask me right now after today, I'm like, man, that sucks. I don't know about Steven Silas vibes. It's a different situation, but I mean, he could potentially not be the best one. We just don't know at the moment. I mean, last year we had a bunch of injuries, so it's kind of tough. But I mean, he was batting Jordan the two last year, a lot of the year, I believe. Like it was supposed to be innovative, and it really didn't work out. Today, you could have critiqued his bullpen management. I mean, but and people argue too, like manager is like irrelevant in baseball, but It's tough. It's early, so it's early in this year in his career. And then he says, G says, do you see Kaney permanently safe, or you think they will bring in competition, especially with no John Weeks anymore? That's a great question and a great way to phrase it too, with the John Weeks angle since he's gone. Um, I think they could move on from him financially. It could help, or they could extend him and save money as well. Um, I think they think highly of him. I mean, he just had, the bad game against the Chiefs. And then I think last year as well, he might have had a clutch game he missed a clutch kick too. But I don't think you just move on that quickly. Like, I mean, everything else he's done prior. But I would say this year, if he starts to struggle, they might consider it. But I don't think they would right now. I think you're just playing with fire. I mean, I don't feel like great kickers are just hanging out in the street. I mean, it's tough, man. But I think he'll stay and he'll improve. Forever Royal says, kind of disappointed the Texans haven't met with Trey Harris pre-draft. Yeah, so for me, Trey Harris, special talent, great receiver, but he's not a fit for us, in my opinion. Some people will tell you otherwise, but he's the prototypical X receiver, 6'4", 220. He's literally like Nico Collins, same role, same skill sets, but not as good nearly as Nico. If we were to get him, it would kind of displace the roles, in my opinion. I think Jaden Higgins is another one. He's a great talent, but the X receiver is the one you don't want two of on an offense. You want like Z and Slot are kind of okay. You can, in my opinion, kind of move, because they're both kind of versatile. But the X is like the outside field stretcher, bigger possession guy. I don't think you get multiple of those because now you just got two guys doing this instead of having, and yeah, I know they can do it, but they don't do it as good. So that's my thoughts on that. I think he's good, but I don't think he's a fit. And I will say that we could, you know what we'll do? We'll go through and look at the visits that we've had. And I think I might write an article on this. My thought process is that I will analyze like all the visits and look at like history of, the last couple of years with DeMeco and for Caserio and guys that have visited on different types of visits and which ones have converted into us drafting somebody. So I believe last year we only drafted one out of all the visits. And then I think the year before is different. So it depends year to year. It depends. Last year we traded our first round draft pick, so that could have changed things. But I think there's a couple things you can look at when looking at visits. One is the type of position. So I want to break that down in my article too, and like do a deep dive and see what we can extrapolate from that to help us kind of project, things that might happen in the draft. But, we can look at the names and it could mean, okay, we're looking at these positions. And then also too, like traits, like guys that are fast. Okay. Or even like types of players at that position can indicate the type of receiver they're looking for. Which I believe is, as Lou says, Kyle Williams in the 3rd round pick is a beast, in my humble opinion. Yes, I've been talking about him since day one. I've been watching him since his first year at Washington State because I've been a Cam Ward fan following his career. So I've known about him. He's a great fit for us too, like personnel-wise, receiver-wise. He's a perfect fit. And let's see. Lou also says that the Texans move up in the 1st round, how far would they draft? I mean, I would initially say, it's like golden, like at pick 20 and you trade, minimal capital. But I mean, I could see him trading up like top 10, top 15 for like a Will Campbell. Like I don't know, dude. Caserio's a wild card. They're all in. They got capital. I could see him going crazy. Henry Jack says, should the Texans draft Washington State wide receiver Kyle Williams at pick 25? I don't know about pick 25. I would take him in the 2nd. I know he started out as like a 3rd, 4th round pick, but I'm super high on him. He's awesome, but I don't know if I would take him at 25. Unknown says, Henry Jack, heck no, that would be a crazy reach. Yeah. And he says, I think we'll take him, but not in the 1st. Yeah. Yeah, in the 3rd for sure. I mean, late 2nd, I would consider it. Brandon says, some of the interviews, I wonder if they're actually interested in drafting them or just collecting info on them before they join a competitor. That's an angle. And then typically too, some of the guys that you like interview again with to get to know them further is you have some questions about them. Like they got some character issues to kind of vet them out. Some people say, okay, well, you could be getting intel on their teammates as well. We've met with a lot of Texas players. So I'm gonna do a deep dive into all that. And then Henry says, "Can the Texans draft DeMeco Ryans at pick 25 overall to reunite with C.J. Stroud?" Yeah, it could definitely happen. It could definitely happen. Let me see. I might pull up. There's a site called Walter Football, and they kind of give you. Let's see, Walter Football visits, and share screen. All right. And then Unknown says, Garrett, if you're a Cam Ward fan, that's great. You'll watch us beat him twice a year. Yeah, and so like when I say I'm a Ward fan, it's because he went to I played college football at SFA and then Incarnate Word in San Antonio. And then I graduated in 2012. But basically, I've been involved with like an alumni program with him. And so I've been close to the UIW football program since then. And I basically saw his first ever game in person that spring COVID year against Lamar. So I saw him right then and there, and I said, "This guy's an NFL quarterback." Met his parents after and told them that, and they were saying like, "You think he's good at football? You should watch him play basketball." But anyways, I've watched his whole career because he started from a small CS, overlooked out of high school, ran the triple option offense, West Columbia outside of Houston, and so he found by Incarnate Word, balled out, went to Washington State, called the OC there, and then he went to Miami and played for my OC that was my OC at SFA. And so, like, there's been a lot of connections, but, like, the story's been awesome, and he's just stud. I've been calling it out that he's the best quarterback in the draft for 2 years, year and a half in his class. Yeah, so, I mean, yes, it's good. Yeah, I think he will struggle a little bit his first year with, like, the heroics, trying to be Superman, figuring out that he can't get away with that stuff that he did in college. But, yeah, I'll definitely be rooting against him, but it'll be tough for me, like the other games, to watch him and not him. He's a good kid and he's a playmaker, man. But yeah, it's Texans all day, every day, for sure. All right, so yeah, if you go to this website, they kind of got a list, and they have like the different types of visits. So Elijah Arroyo, tied in from Miami, that was a T30, it's top 30, but say it's just a 30 visit, but they got a 30 visit. So that one was surprising to me because that is the only tight end we met with was Elijah Arroyo. Maybe they got intel on Cam Ward. And so if we were to get a tight end, I wouldn't think it would be that type of tight end. Like, I like Elijah Arroyo, but he's more of like a big receiver, essentially. Like Dalton Schultz is like him, but not as good as far as receiving. But that would be redundant. If we wanted a tight end, I would want someone who'd be able to block. But yeah, that's the only tight end. So, but Jaden Blue, running back, was a local visit. And then that's one running back, and then Omarion Hampton at the combine, that's two running backs. Jarquez Hunter, running back from Auburn, a virtual, that's three running backs. Quinshon Junkins, running back, Ohio State, 30 visit, that's four running backs. Brashard Smith, running back, a local visit from SMU, that's five running backs. So they've met with five running backs. They're going to draft a running back. They're telling us right now. I mean, this is similar to we signed EJ Speed, right? And like that caught me off guard. But then you look back, 2-3 weeks ago, there was rumor that they wanted to get Dre Greenlaw. Like, okay, like they told us, like, hey, we're interested in this type of player, and they went and got him. So I mean, they, the signs are out there. So going off like the number of tips, we're gonna get a running back, and it could be second, third round the guys are getting, or it could be a late round guy, it could be a fifth round guy. Receiver, they met with a lot of receivers. Isaiah Bond was a virtual visit. Matthew Golden was a local visit. That's two. And then let's see, Kyle Williams, a 30 visit. That's three receivers they've met with. And this is their list. It may not be 100% up to date and include all the names. So obviously we know we're going to get a receiver. And then obviously we know we're going to get a lineman. So they've met with plenty of linemen. Tyler Booker at the combine. Josh Connerly Jr. from Oregon, would love that pick. They've met with him, a 30 visit. And then so also Charles Grant from William and Mary on a 30 visit. That's 3. And then Chase Lunt, a tackle out of Connecticut. That's 4. They don't have Gray Zabel on here because it wasn't reported. So that's 5, including Gray Zabel. And then let's see. Yeah, so they've met with, I think, 5 on here, but this list may not have all of them, but things will be good to kind of cross-reference. And then, corner, met with the guy out of East Carolina, Siobhan Ravel, and then they've also met with BJ Mays out of Texas A&M at the Pro Day. And so they could get a nickel cornerback in the mid to late rounds. What other position? Quarterback that met 1 years at his Pro Day. I mean, whatever. I mean, maybe they draft him late. I doubt it. But this, and this too is like what gets reported, honestly. So I'm sure there's a lot of, visits that happen we just don't know about. So that's the other part of it too, is like they could probably have conversations that just aren't official. But yeah, the running back, the running back's the big glaring one. Defensive end, they've met with a couple of defensive ends, Kyle Kennard out of South Carolina and Shamar Stewart out of A&M, but that was a local deal. And so part of it too is like if you happen to be, at an event like the Combine or the Pro Day, or if you're having like a local workout, like it's like a workaround to get to have these visits too. So, that's part of it as well. But they've met with a couple linebackers too. That's surprising. They met with the inside backer and an outside backer. And I don't know if those visits were before we got EJ Speed or not, but I would assume so. But yeah, defensive end, maybe they could get a depth defensive end late, 5th round or so. I'm trying to see safety, Andrew Makuba. That was at the Combine. That was before we got C.J. Gardner-Johnson. I don't think we would draft a safety. Offensive tackle, T.J. Sanders. Then we had, I feel like this is missing quite a bit. So T.J. Sanders and Malik. We've met with, there's been a lot of defensive tackles that aren't on here. Kenneth Grant. Yeah, so I'll have to like combine this with like Aaron Wilson's reports and kind of do like a comprehensive list and a deep dive and extrapolate any kind of see if we can find anything. It'd be pretty cool. So Trevor Royal says, I really want Tennessee to draft Cam Ward over Travis Hunter. I don't. I think Cam Ward would be the better pick for him. Brandon says, I talked to Walter. He's streaming right now. Oh, really? Ask him to update his list. I don't know if his thing is updated. Lou the Food, Jags drafting Warren makes me nervous. Yeah, it's still Lawrence. Henry Jack, I saw a picture of C.J. Stroud and Emeka Ibuka in Texans uniforms. Yes, I'm sure that looked dope. Yeah, he'd make a great Texan, dude. He's like the epitome of swarm. Unknown says, dude, I'm playing for Brevin Jordan breakout year. I'm praying for a Brevin Jordan breakout year. Pray no longer, he will. Brandon says, they told us they were getting a second round OT with their interviews live, but people didn't notice. Yeah, I know. I agree. Yeah. We got to start thinking how, and that's why, like, we think how we want to think, but if you like look at what they're doing, then, you can come to different assumptions. Yep. Royal says Gray wasn't announced. Brandon says, yeah, that's sneaky. Brandon says, wonder if they snuck in a visit with Donovan in there. And also too, like, I don't know how like the process of making these official, but like they could have like, I think, some of the Combine stuff is like reported whenever someone asks like, hey, did you meet with the Texans? Like, yes, I met with them. Okay. Met with the Texans. And then like, it just gets passed along. So, some of these people could have met with teams we just don't know about. I don't know if there's like a law to like submit to the league. I think it's just like reporters gather it and that's pretty much it. That's my understanding. So, Brandon says, didn't they sneak the visit with Chip Kelly too? I'm pretty sure they did. And, and that's the other thing too, is this sounds like all these visits is like a matter of people catching on to you or not. So, and if it's a matter of like you or the agent getting information, we know that Caserio and DeMeco don't anything out between injuries and all kind of news. So that's a big part of it too. Like, there's probably a lot about. Obviously, we can only work with what we know. So, this isn't the end all be all, but there's probably plenty of names on here that they've had contact with that we just don't know about. And then Patriots Focus. So I'm doing a mock draft. I believe that is tonight. Yes, I am. Am I on the clock? Would be the question. Let me see. Let me check my Instagram and make sure I didn't. Let's see. Yeah, I am. Did I miss it? Patriot Focus. If not, let me know. So I joined a mock draft with 31 other NFL team fan content creators. So I will share with you guys. And I also got a partnership coming with the PFF All 22. They have a draft prize app, which I'll be sharing with you guys, where you can like make all the picks on different things that happen, and based on how you do, you can get points or prizes or whatever it is. So more info to come on that. And then Brandon says, did they use to sneak visits at the Patriots? I'm sure they did, but he says no, it's next Monday. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I'll be there, man. And like I said, if in that draft, if I lapse, just DM me. But yeah, fellas, that's all I got. I enjoyed it. The interview with Brandon B. Scott was awesome. If y'all don't follow him, if y'all don't follow me, I think y'all do, obviously. But do it on all platforms if you don't mind. It would help, even if you aren't active. But obviously, Twitter or X, it's at Texans Commenter. Same thing on TikTok and YouTube. And then it's at Houston Stressans on Instagram and Facebook. I have my website, HoustonStressans.com, free newsletter. I try to send it out weekly. Feel free to subscribe. I haven't written an article in a little while. I'm sure I'll try to do one soon. But yeah, and if you missed the podcast, you can rewatch it on YouTube or Apple or Spotify podcast. Just type in Houston Stressans, or the show is called Second Guessan with Stressan. That's pretty much all I got. I appreciate each and every one of y'all. And yeah, if you ever got a question, just hit me up. But until next time, we bless.